Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, my gratitude goes to God Almighty for this blessing and mercy, so that I can present my research proposal. Before I explain the research proposal, first of all, the Honorable Mr. Elvin Perawan Zibua, SPD MPD, as the Chair of English Education Study Program, the Honorable Mr. Aforeta Harepa, SPD MHUM, as the Secretary of English Education Study Program, the Honorable Mr. Christoph Martin Eforiti Lomanua SS MPD as the advisor who always gives a lot of new site, suggestion, correction, support, and guides the research from beginning until completing this proposal. The Honorable Madam Hidayati Deli SPD MPD as the reviewer, the Honorable are of the audience. My name is Bonavide Kristiani Gulo. My title in this research is the descriptive analysis on teacher strategy in teaching English writing of context at the A grade of UPTD SMP Negeri 2 Manihé Barat in 2022-2023. So, in my research proposal, we discussed three parts. First is chapter 1, introduction, chapter 2, literature review, and the last is chapter 3, research method. So now let's discuss one by one. For the first is chapter 1 about background of the research. Learning is an activity reciprocal relationship between teachers and students, where the proposal of increasing knowledge and shaping attitudes first. Teaching strategy are the important parts of the teaching and learning process. Teaching strategy is the strategy of the educational used in the teaching learning process as the planning method or teacher's activity designed to achieve the goals or objectives of the material work. So in curriculum 2013 at the A grade of UPTD SMP Negeri 2 Manihé Barat, there are several types of text, one of which is recount text. In the syllabus, students are expected to compose oral and written recount text, very short and simple, relate to the personal experience in the past or personal accounts, with attention to social function, text structure, and linguistic elements correctly and in a context. In reality, based on preliminary observation at UPTD SMP Negeri 2 Manihé Barat, the researchers find the problems such as many students still struggle while learning how to create traditional text. They still struggle to articulate their truth and were unsure of what to put in the recontext, and also the students find it difficult to determine the generic structure of the recontext and also the language structures used in writing recontext. In regard to this data, the research conduct a qualitative research. So to describe the strategy used by teachers in teaching writing of recontext. Okay. By referring to the problem, the research focused on writing recontext and a teacher strategy. So, according to Harmore 2004 in Sinaga et al. 2022, said that writing is a form of communicate to deliver an idea or to specific feeling through written form. So the recontext is a type of text that tells a story or describes past events or experience. The purpose of a recontext is to retell events or experiences that have happened in the past, often in chronological order. And the next is teaching strategy. Strategy is a part of the process used by the teachers to carry out teaching activities. It aims to carry out ideas, plans, goals in a period of time. So, according to Iowa 2017, in reality et al. 2022, teaching strategy is the strategy of the educational use in the teaching learning process as a planning method or teacher's activity designed to achieve the goal or objective of their material work. And the next is focus of the research. So in this research, there are two focus of the research. For the first is to analyze the kinds of the teaching strategy that applied by English teachers at UPTD SMP Negeri Domenech Barat in teaching context. And the last is to describe how the teaching strategy that applied by English teachers at UPTD SMP Negeri Domenech Barat in teaching English writing context. And the next is formulation of the problems. So the formulation of the problem is, for the first, what kinds of teaching strategies were used by the teachers in teaching writing context. And the last is, how does teaching strategy are implemented by the teachers in teaching writing of context. And the next is objective of the research. So there are the objective of the research. For the first is to find out what the kinds of the teaching strategy that applied by English teacher at UPTD SMP Negeri Domenech Barat in teaching context. And the last is to find out how the teaching strategy that applied by English teacher at UPTD SMP Negeri Domenech Barat in teaching context. The next is significance of the research. So there are the significance of the research. For the first is theoretically and practically. Theoretically, this research will be a useful source of information or reference for the future research related to the teacher's strategy in teaching English writing of the context. And the next is practically. Practically, this research will also be useful for the teachers, students, and also future research. And the next is research method. In research method, there are two. For the first is approach, and the last is types of the research. So the approach used by the research to conduct the research of using inductive approach, and the types of the research is descriptive qualitative research. So according to Creswell 2030, state that qualitative research begins with assumption and the use of interpretive or theoretical frameworks that inform the study of research problems addressing the meaning individuals or groups ascribe to a social or human problem. And the next is variable of the research. So in the research, uh, the researchers use of two variables of the research. For the first, for the first is dependent variable. Dependent variable as a writing of context, and the last is independent variables. So the independent variable is teacher's strategy. And the next is settings and schedule of the research. So this research will be conducted at UPTD SMP Negeri 2 Mandailing Barat, especially the A grade. The location of this research is in Lasarapaga Village, Mandailing Barat Subdistrict, West Nias Regency. The research will be conducted in May 2023, starting with observation. The next is source of data. In the research, data sources are obtain observation and interview the English teachers with information related to the research title. For the first is observing the strategy used by the teachers in teaching writing context through observation sheet. And the next is interview the English teachers in the form of explanation and information needed by research from the school. And the next is instrument of the research. There are the instrument of the research. For the first is observation sheet, and the second is voice record, and the last is interview sheet. And the next is data collecting technique. Data collecting technique, for the first is observation. The researchers conducted observation to collect data through observation sheet observed by research related to the strategies used by teachers in teaching writing. This observation was carried out to obtain information data in the form of a description of the teacher's strategy in teaching writing and as concrete evidence that can be then analyzed. And the last is interview. The research used a semi-structured interview for that data collection. And the last is data analysis technique. There are ways to analyze the data. For the first is data redaction. The second is data display, and the last is drawing calculation. So my presentation about my research proposal, and thank you.